Hey, Mike, so many cars have so much history and value to them. And speaking of value, how much did this car cost to build, and how much is it worth now?
Well, this car was developed by Penske in the Can-Am, and it actually came from another type of racing in Europe when they decided to run it in the Can-Am. So they built, I'm not sure how many they built of these cars. I think they built 15 of these cars. They campaigned in Inter Series in Europe, and of course they came to the Can-Am in America. These were the only two that came. Penske campaigned 2 of them here. And then 4 more showed up as well. Peter Gregg campaigned 1, and some of the Europeans had also come over. And Vasek Polak from nearby Hermosa Beach campaigned 2 of them as well. So the cars back then, I think they were probably around, I don't know, $40,000 back then. And today, this car chassis 3 that we're sitting here with the history in it, it's worth about 15 to 20 million.
15 to 20 million?
Today, yes.
Wow. Whoa.
And like I say, it's not a car that the average vintage car guy can go just drive around the racetrack in. It's a very expensive car to run, obviously, and it's extremely quick.
Is this the most expensive car here?
I don't know. I haven't walked around. Probably the most expensive car would be a 917K Gulf car that, Steve McQueen Le Mans movie, and those cars, if there's some of those here, those are in the $27 million to $30 million range. Those would probably be the most expensive if there's any of those here.
Crazy, these Porsche prices.
This 907 sitting here is worth about $8 million.
Wow.
Or actually, it's a 908. So it varies. There's cars are that James Dean Spider type car sitting back there is probably worth $4 or $5 million.
Let me ask you a question. Now, in the last 5-7 years, your late 60s and 70s Porsches, no matter what condition, all quadruple, 10 times, 20 times value. Why is that all of a sudden now? Was it with Singer making up cars and all these other iconic aftermarket manufacturers, or car? Why has it gone up so much? Why?
Well, the Porsche enthusiasts, the United States is the biggest market for Porsche, and California is probably the single largest state for Porsches. So there's a tremendous contingency of Porsche owners in this state, let alone the United States. And the Porsche value has just gone up crazily because the Porsche car company, their sales are gone through the roof. I mean, the Porsche is doing extremely well on the new end side. And so anything that's Porsche related, people know that it has a huge value, and regardless of the history of the car, whether it's a street car. And the old days of the barnyard find or the storage unit find has pretty much gone out the window because of all the reality TV shows of restoring cars and Gas Monkey Garage and these things. So people find these cars, if they can, they know right away that it has a tremendous value, regardless of the shape it's in. If it's totally original, with 50,000 original miles, a 60 or 50s car, it's huge.
Okay, how about the reverse stories like mine? I sold my 67 912 a few years ago, and it went through the roof. So I was like, I can't believe I sold my car. I was like, a Targa 67 912. And is there any stories you have like that? Like I remorse. I have dreams, nightmares that I sold this car. And do you have a story like that?
Our first car in our family was a 66 912.
Oh,
and it was Bahama yellow. And those cars today are, $200,000.
I'm kicking myself. My 67 white.
And a 67 911, we had a 67 911, we time trialed and campaigned. And then I grew up, we restored Porsches. We had a 57 Speedster and we had a 59 Convertible D. We fully restored those cars and showed them and campaigned them in Porsche time trials, Porsche Owner Club time trial type events. And those cars today are just like 3 times the value or 4 times the value of what we sold them for.
I did an interview, Edward James Olmos?
Yes.
I was doing a photo shoot with him one day, and he was all like depressed and weird, and I'm like, James, Edward, Eddie, what's wrong? He's like, someone just stole my Porsche like 4 hours ago, and he's just like so depressed, so out of it. I'm like, this is just how we feel about our Porsches, right?
Yeah, it's that side of the thing. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of the theft that goes on with these cars as well, and they end up leaving the country most likely. It's pretty difficult to steal a car like this behind us because of the history of it, and there's so few of them that what would you do with it? I mean, if it shows up, you're going to get caught doing it.
Well, here's a question. So do you guys GPS these things at all?
I don't know per se if that street cars obviously are valuable street cars that drive on the street because they're more acceptable to having that happen. Race cars like this behind us, most likely no. What happens in a race car situation, they usually take the truck, really not even knowing what's in it. They'll take the whole truck, and then when they get home, they open it up, and there's this and maybe something else in there. So that's happened before, obviously. But the racing community is a real tight-knit group, and they stick together. They find these things. Absolutely. If something happens and it's known, the person will get
awesome
in custody real quick.
Mike Follmer, an authority on Porsche, and we talked about his Uncle George Follmer and this $12 to $15 million Porsche from number 3 from 1972. Insane.
Yeah, it's pretty unique, and it's one of my favorite cars. When I was a little kid, young kid, I used to work on this car as a gopher with Roger Penske's son, Roger Penske Jr. He and I used to polish the wheels and push this car around as kids.
This could be a documentary, you guys. This really could be a documentary. But we got to close it out. So FabTV here at the, how do you pronounce the name of this event? I always have trouble.
Luftgeku
5 event, and it was great talking to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.